Hearing Loss Live talks with Cristina Duarte of InnoCaption. Hello, welcome to Hearing Loss Live. Today we are super excited to introduce Cristina from InnoCaption. We are pretty big fans of InnoCaption, as you can tell. Caveat, I do contract with them as a steno writer. I write about that in my blog. So if you're a steno writer joining us today, read about it. If you have questions, come to us at Hearing Loss Live, and I am happy to answer questions. Cristina, can you give us a little background on InnoCaption and your connection to the hearing loss community?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Cristina, and I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for InnoCaption. And what that means is I make sure that the company, because we're regulated by the FCC, that we stay in compliance. I also help out a lot with the management of the company and interact a lot with the community, which is probably my favorite part of my job. What we do is very personal to me because I am a CODA, child of deaf adults. Both of my parents were born with profound hearing loss, both into hearing families. They both learned to sign when they were in their 20s, actually at Self-Help for the Hard of Hearing, which is now Hearing Loss Association of America. And growing up, I was always helping my parents answer the phone back before there was telecommunications accessibility. So I remember from a very young age answering the phone, Duarte's residence, Cristina speaking. I had my whole spiel down. I was very proud of myself. Honestly, I loved doing it. So as I got older, my dad is actually a biomedical engineer, and he is very into assistive technology. He does custom loop systems, actually. So he would go to all of these exhibits for hearing loss and for deaf individuals all over the country, and would test out different telecommunication solutions. He traveled all the time when I was younger, and my phone would always ring. It would always be him when I was younger, landline, and as I got older, my cell phone. And it would always start the same, hey, Cristina, this is Dad. I'd be like, hi, Dad. He's like, how do I sound? I'm like, you sound good. And over the years, all the calls at some point became a disappointment, whether it was like, oh, slow down, I can't keep up with you, or I can't really hear too well on this. And so it kind of became something I expected, that I would get these calls from my dad, and at some point something would go wrong and he'd be like, no, the technology isn't quite there yet, but thanks, I love you, I'll talk to you later. Years ago, trying to think of what year, my dad called me from Hearing Loss Association of America, and he called me from the InnoCaption app. He was there, they were at an exhibit, and for the first time, it was like I was talking to a hearing person on the phone. I was kind of talk faster and then talk slower, and he was still right there with me, understanding everything I was saying. I was like, oh my God, Dad, you need this. So that was my first interaction with the InnoCaption app. We got involved in advocacy shortly thereafter, and we both got involved in the company. So it's something that is very near and dear to my heart. My father is one of the co-CEOs for the company now, and I had my job first, not nepotism. And I really love what I do. I feel like I've been talking forever, but really quickly, the difference between the InnoCaption app and everybody else on the market is, as Julia already mentioned, we use live stenographers to produce the captions. In the last couple of years, we've also implemented an automatic speech recognition solution based on user feedback, and our users actually get to choose whether for a call they want to use automatic speech recognition or a live stenographer, and they can switch as their accessibility needs change. So everything we do puts our development based on community feedback, and I think that makes what we have really special.
I'll turn it over to questions in a minute. Yeah, and I know there was a lot of nervousness about the speech to text addition to InnoCaption. And I'm here to say it does not affect whether you're a steno writer or not in any way. I think it's been a help from some of the clients. When Shelley and I were working for the state, there was a discussion about InnoCaption and so I'm going to do COVID pandemic. It was a coffee chat that was like, I have caption call. I can't get through on the phone. I don't know what to do. I'm very stressed. And one of the InnoCaption users spoke up and said, you need to get this. It has speech recognition. So my call is picked up. And as soon as a steno writer is available, it immediately transfers over. I don't have dropped calls. I can get out in emergencies. And the speech to text is pretty good. So I have heard that firsthand, and I know there was some concern, but I'm here to tell you it really doesn't affect us. We're busy. And with the post-pandemic, I think we're going to continue to see those hybrid busyness on what's needed for people to work from home.
Yeah, I just to follow up on that, Julia, we saw incredible volumes during the pandemic, and our users were so pleased that they were still able to place calls. We joke that we were ready for a pandemic and we didn't even know it. We had our automatic speech recognition on beta, and we had the system that you're talking about, our CART priority system set up, where users who feel like CART is what best meets their accessibility needs can choose that. And then no matter what, their calls will go through. If we're experiencing surges, it'll start with ASR and then automatically transfer over to a CART provider when one's available. And we just received such great feedback on that. People were very happy.
Shelley, you want to give some experience? You've got firsthand experience working with InnoCaption and using it as an app, and tell us your thoughts on it.
Okay, yes, I have had InnoCaption on my phone for years, and I for a long time I had huge anxiety about the phone because without captions, people would get mad at me. So I pretty much stayed away from the phone until I absolutely had to. And then one day, I think it was at the Minneapolis convention for HLAA that I was there, and I had to call in for a taxi or a ride to the hotel. Oh my gosh. So I finally pulled up my InnoCaption. I used it, and I'm like, well, that was easy. So I started using it really regularly after that. I think when the pandemic came in and I was on the landline kind of caption phones and I was having issues, so I would switch over to my InnoCaption app, and I hardly ever had any problems there. And through the pandemic, I got even more comfortable with the phone because of InnoCaption. And I've tried others. I like them, but I still just prefer InnoCaption, and I'm comfortable that it's there. Somebody was right there saying ring 1, ring 2, ring 3. So I know it's ringing. I've been on another one where I don't get that, and I'm like, oh, is it ringing or is it not ringing? I don't know what's happening, and I'll hang up because I like to know that somebody's there with me. Otherwise, that anxiety just comes back. So for the first time in a long time, in years, I am actually using the phone without anxiety. So I really appreciate the InnoCaption app.
Oh, I love hearing stuff like that from our users. I think your experience is not uncommon from what I've seen from family members, my friends in the community. There's a little learning curve, and a lot of people have phone anxiety before they use InnoCaption or any other assistive technology for the first time. You're in a position where for so many years you've relied on other people or other means of communication. And especially if you've had those experiences, I've watched my parents have them before accessible technology, where there weren't captions and they're like, I'm sorry, what? And people aren't very patient, to the point that my parents, even if they didn't want me in the middle of a call, would pull me over and say, hey, can you help me there? And with those experiences, obviously, I will never understand because I'm hearing, but I am a very empathetic individual. So I feel like I kind of internalize that stuff, and that's part of the reason that I love this technology so much. I think it's interesting. I'm sorry, Shell, did you want to say something? You talking about the ring prompts and the nonverbal cues. I do a lot of advocacy and education about this. As Julia mentioned, when we first launched automatic speech recognition, we not only had concern from CART providers, but we also had a lot of concern from the community. I remember sending out the email saying that we had this as an option, and having longtime users email me personally, just very desperate, being like, oh my goodness, are you guys getting rid of CART? And that's when I added to all my presentations this advocacy and education about people's accessibility needs and how they're all different. First of all, we are not getting rid of CART. Where you talk about how important it is for your accessibility needs to have those nonverbal cues like ringing, so you know what's going on. We developed the ASR solution because we were hearing from users and people who weren't our users that wanted to be, saying, well, for my accessibility needs, I don't feel comfortable having a third party on the line. It didn't matter that it's confidential, we're regulated, so it's highly confidential. Our stenographers only hear one half of the conversation, unless it's a conference call. And we have all of these security procedures in place, everything's encrypted, but for them, I had people say, well, my functional equivalence will never be met until I can call my long distance girlfriend and know that somebody can't even hear half of the conversation. Or everybody in my life has incredibly clear voices. Automatic speech recognition works well for me, and that is my preference. So even for me, when we started developing it, as somebody who grew up in the community, my experiences with automatic speech recognition hadn't been great, especially because my dad is from Portugal and he has a hearing loss. So automatic speech recognition doesn't even know what to do with him. Half the time it's spitting out curse words or stuff that people start giggling during meetings. Luckily, he has a great sense of humor, so he'll see it and start laughing too and be like, no, guys, that's not what I said. My mom was using automatic speech recognition because they didn't have a CART provider presenting to some parents of students. She teaches deaf education. And she was saying, oh, my name's Meg Duarte. I have a master's in deaf education. And the caption said, I have a master's in defecation. So she got a laugh after the fact, I think, as soon as she processed and went through, like, they knew what I meant, right? But so we do a lot of education on the differences between CART providers and how CART providers can provide those nonverbal cues, not only ringing, but dogs barking, children crying. And as a hearing person, I know I take that for granted a lot of the times, and a lot of people I do know too. To be able to know there's a dog barking lets me say something like, oh, you have a dog? I have one too. What kind do you have? Or a child crying, oh, is everything okay? Do you need me to call you back? But without those, you could be in a position where somebody's child is crying. If you haven't disclosed your hearing loss, they don't know that you have a hearing loss. And you're just continuing to talk through that child crying, and not to mention what that background noise can do to automatic speech recognition captions. So the strengths of automatic speech recognition is where people have very clear vanilla voices that have been trained on automatic speech recognition, those captions are very fast. They're very fast, and they can be very accurate if you have a very, very, very clear voice. Now, you have some kind of speech pattern beyond the realm of what it's been trained to do, and those captions can quickly become useless. I was watching a webinar with a continuing legal education course, and the speaker, I feel like I've become a good judge of where automatic speech recognition will do really well and where it's going to struggle. I'm listening to this speaker. She has a very clear voice. And I'm thinking, oh, she's going to do great. Her captions were terrible on automatic speech recognition. So I started listening closer, and I realized she was nervous and her voice was shaking. And automatic speech recognition didn't know what to do with that. So I always tell people, even if automatic speech recognition is your preference, there will very likely be calls, whether it's the person's speech pattern, an accent, or even connectivity, that you will need to switch over to a CART provider to get usable captions. And then that CART provider can probably tell you what's going on the line, whether it's, oh, you have poor connection, speaker far away. Our CART providers are trained to work for our users as if anything they hear, they tell you. Dog barking, bad connection, beeping, muffled speaker. Automatic speech recognition just isn't at that point and is unable to provide those kinds of cues. I'll get off my soapbox now. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to touch a bit on the anxiety again before captions, where I was struggling as a hairdresser in a salon, which is very noisy anyway, trying to be on the phone in a new salon, everything new for me because I moved, and having people call me, and this is how rude some people are. Maybe they just don't know, they don't understand. But people, there was this one lady who would call, and if she heard my voice, she'd say, "Oh, it's you. I'll call back another time," and hang up. And I would go home crying after these all day of phone calls similar to that. And then you also spoke about confidentiality and people being uncomfortable with somebody being there. And I've lost 2 friends who would not use the captions because, well, somebody's listening, I'm just not comfortable. And could you please just call me without them? And I said, but I won't understand hardly anything. And she said, oh, it's okay, I just want to hear your voice. And I'm like, but what about my part of the friendship?
Michelle, real question. What kind of crimes were your friends trying to plan with you that they were uncomfortable having a CART provider on the call? You can tell me after, but like, yeah, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to say. I mean, there's nothing to hide. And I've had people when I worked for the state come in and say, oh, I can't have the government listening to me. And in my head is always, what the heck are you saying on phone calls? You know? So I get you. To me, I have nothing to hide. It's just, I want to have that conversation with friends if they'll let me.
You know, I think, and part of why we developed automatic speech recognition was we had a small handful of users who felt the same way. And, you know, at the end of the day, everybody defines their own accessibility needs. As a hearing person, it's not up to me to say, oh, this will work for you, this, because who knows? I have people come up to me all the time and say, sell me on your platform. Why are you better than everybody else? And everybody else at my company probably hates me for this, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't know what your accessibility needs are. I'm very confident in our technology. I can tell you the technological differences between the technology. I can tell you what we use, but I strongly encourage that you try everything and see what best meets your needs. Am I pretty confident that at the end of the day, you will come back to InnoCaption? Yeah, but if you don't, that's okay too, because for me, I would rather somebody find a solution that truly meets their needs that they're happy with than to retain a user that there's something better out there for them. Go ahead, Julia. Sorry.
Well, I was just thinking because as a contractor, we have training for FCC regulations. So you put a training for us together once a year, I think it is. And I always love it because it reminds me my job, it's hard as a CART provider. So there are clients I have, they just want, like at a college level, I'll use it. They just want what the professor says. They don't care what's going on behind them. They just want me to capture what the professor's going on. There's other students who are like, yeah, I want to hear what this conversation is over here. And I'm happy to do that. And we get kind of complacent, I'll be honest. Hopefully I still have a contract at the end of this, but Her trainings are great because it reminds us how important to write dog barking, to write noise in background, to let the caller know, I'm not trying to caption badly. I can barely hear because it's so muffled. And that's not what I write, but it's important that they know that we are there for them. And I think the pandemic, and I could be wrong, caused some controversy on who could use what. I thought it was pretty clear myself. I think InnoCaption did a great job making sure people had what they needed during a pandemic when, I'm sorry, Zoom, your automatic captions suck. And everybody's on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and you're expected to understand these auto captions. And so the ability to have access in the way that the client needs was so important, I think, in my mind. And I think sometimes we forget that. I have many contracts all over the place. And I will say, as a CART provider, best scenario for hearing is live something like this. But that's not always possible for whatever reason, whatever the comfortable is, whatever. So that InnoCaption immediately went after, we need to make sure clients can still have access to their jobs. I thought that was just outstanding of them. The other part of that, when a client is struggling, they can come to Cristina and say, how do I talk to my employer? And they are willing to help them with, here's a list of CART providers. You can take it to your employer. And I remember at an HLAA meeting, Hearing Loss Association chapter, we brought her into Salt Lake. You talked about how you're willing to go to clients' employers and explain the differences. And I think that's something that's very, very important and should be understood. That's my soapbox. Sorry.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. During the pandemic, everybody struggled. It was incredibly difficult for the deaf and hard of hearing community. It was difficult for the hearing community because everybody, all of a sudden, even people who weren't technologically savvy, were forced into this online environment. And I had to do a lot of advocacy and education. I had users approach me saying, my employer's nervous. They want me to use these automated captions. It's not working for me. I want to use InnoCaption. It meets my accessibility needs, but my employer's concerned about the security. So we started doing security assessments. I've done them for years on a smaller scale, but during the pandemic, I was very busy talking to multiple large organizations in the medical field, financial field, showing them how we were secure and providing that level of education to let them know, as a telecommunications relay service, we're bound by certain rules. I also did a lot of advocacy about contracting directly with CART providers and telling employers who approached us saying, oh, we want to open an account for our employee. First off, in Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service, which is what we are, it's how we're classified in the federal government, we are not able to allow businesses, it's called an enterprise account. So it's the user themselves that signs up for it. And that's how it should be, because the user is supposed to dictate what works for them. A user can decide, either InnoCaption on demand meets my accessibility needs and I want to use it for this meeting, or we have users who haven't disclosed their hearing loss. They were getting by until they had to go virtual. And then all of a sudden they had to find some solution where they didn't have to request accommodations from their employer. We heard from somebody who had previously had issues, and they had a laundry list of reasons why they were not going to tell their employer that they were starting to get a hearing loss. And they were just so grateful to have the option to connect through InnoCaption to get those captions privately. And my point in all this is that I've done a lot of advocacy talking about the difference between contracting directly with a CART provider and using InnoCaption. InnoCaption, as everybody has said on this call, is a wonderful service. Our CART providers are on demand. What that means is when you call into Zoom, that CART provider only has that dial in. They're not here looking at the screen with you. They can't see the participants. They don't know who's speaking. They haven't received prep material. So for them, they're jumping into this call with zero context. And for the duration of an hour call, hour and a half, you could have 3 to 4 cart providers who handle that call. You'll never know, because the way our system is designed, the captions stay fluid. But I'm not a cart provider, but I've heard that it is incredibly taxing on your body. So when it is long calls, they will hand them off after a while. A cart provider that you contract with directly will likely be able to provide you with higher levels of accessibility, because they are in that Zoom call. So they can see Julia's talking, Michelle's talking, Shell's talking. They can label participants, but they'll also know ahead of time the context for the conversation. They'll know what we're supposed to be talking about. They'll likely, if it's InnoCaption, they'll go ahead and put it in their dictionary. So all of that kind of shows why, especially in highly technical meetings, or where an employer knows that you have a hearing loss and is willing to provide that, you should still advocate and push for it. And I would tell that to consumers, our users, and I would also tell that to employers who contacted us. And luckily, almost all of them would say, oh, I never thought about it that way. Okay, great. So they can use this if we don't have CART for some reason, or for their phone calls. But if it's a big meeting, so we'll continue even though we're remote to contract with CART. We're like, okay. So that kind of goes back to this. Everybody decides what meets their own accessibility needs. We have some people who, for every call they use, video conference, they will use InnoCaption because that meets their needs. We have other clients who will use it when their regular CART provider isn't available, or if somebody doesn't show up and they're going to be without captions. So we really have users all over that spectrum.
So, yeah, just one quick question. So when people are in on these Zoom meetings and we see the phone number, that's all we know. Because I tend to think that when people call in, because a lot of people have Bluetooth technology to their hearing aids. So I thought it was just an amplification thing, but it's also possibly them using InnoCaption.
Absolutely. So when you dial into Zoom and it gives you the option to either use the computer audio or to dial in, our users will select dial in. So while everybody else is relying on their computer audio, they're using the phone audio.
I'll say one thing too, because I have contracts before I worked for InnoCaption. A lot of my pricing was based on college. College is 16 weeks at a time. One of those weeks is usually a break. When I first started working with colleges, federal aid was not available in summer, so it was fall and spring. So I would have to price myself to be able to survive 32 weeks of the year without work. It's not cheap to be a steno writer. The machine itself, it lasts forever, but it starts at $2,500 for a good machine. Computers, technology, licensing's a couple thousand a year, all of that. So it was hit or miss, and you don't know how many students you're going to have. I try to do on-site here locally before I take anything remote CART for colleges in other states. But I might have one student who's a full-time student, or I might have 3 part-time students, or I might have 1 hour. So by adding InnoCaption, which again, when I was first told about them, I'm like, this is too good to be true. It's not. I tell them, this is what I'm available. They give me whatever amount of hours they need covered in that availability. I'm still able to get to campus and cover a student. And it has allowed me to keep my prices down. So those meetings where I, maybe would have charged $150 an hour so that I can cover the full day or whatever, I can have a lower amount. And that's me personally. Everybody's different a little, and that's a whole other blog and podcast I'll get into on CART provider someday. But for me, it has allowed stability. It's allowed, my kids are, one of them's headed to a doctorate program. I don't have to worry about whether I have a college student next semester or not to help cover it. It's just that it's the stability that I can work as long as I can hardline. I can work anywhere, right? I can choose when I want to work. And for me, I mean, as great as it was when the kids were little to have all summer off, by the time August got here and I hadn't heard from a college, I was panicked. I'm the main provider in our family, and it was, oh my gosh, am I going to have to close my business this time around? And I kind of was there when I first applied to, okay, I blogged about this, but I got to tell my Kevin story. We have the cutest couple in HLAA. And in 2017, HLA, Hearing Loss Association America National Chapter, held their conference in Salt Lake City. And there's a whole other blog on why they didn't hire cart providers locally. And then a bunch of companies complained about the cart that they had at this conference that I'm going to go into someday. But one of the sessions was InnoCaption. And Kevin, he's the hearing spouse of one of our Hearing Loss Association members, comes running over to me. I got to tell you about this company. He's so excited. And he commences to telling me about InnoCaption, and they'll work with your college schedule so you don't have to give up college students. And he was so excited. And I'm like, yeah, this has just got to be too good to be true. And it must have been a slow year. So I'm assuming that at one of the meetings, I was worried about what I'd have for fall. And I remember there's an assessment test. You have to meet a certain speed criteria. And Brian, my boss, said, I guess he's my boss, I don't know, my contract manager, says, okay, I'm going to give you a test. And I broke out, sweat everywhere, rolling off of me because of the test anxiety I have. And I failed the easiest test I've ever taken. And I was so distraught. I think it took me another month or two, seemed like a long time. But anyways, before I went back and said, okay, I'm ready. So one of the things, there was an InnoCaption commercial on Facebook and on one of the court reporting sites, and some girls were asking questions, and I gave my information. I said, contact me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And I was able to say to them, call Wells Fargo, call Bank of America, listen to those computer recordings, call into Cochlear America, their little word bank thing, and get yourself comfortable and ready for a test. Because like me, they were like, a test? We have to take a test? It's all good. I'll walk you through this because I know how this is. But yeah, and they do. I can't say enough, I guess. So.
And that's actually why we'll let cart providers do that initial test a couple of times, because test anxiety is very real. Julia, you are one of the best cart providers I know. And the fact that you failed the first test because of that test anxiety. So I constantly remind people, I'm like, well, this is why we need more than one opportunity. And it's worked out very well for us. Honestly, everybody who contracts with us is just so highly talented. And to contract with us, especially those of you who have been with us for years, I mean, in the beginning, we had to pay lower rates. And as you know, Julia, we unsolicited have raised the rates for our stenographers every year. We've been in business, but everybody who works for us, contracts with us, I feel like I've heard from so many people talking about how they love what they do because of the impact they can feel that they're making. And I try to do my best, the whole team does, to communicate, whether it's during training or Paul during payroll emails, about that impact. I mean, we've heard from users. One of my favorite stories, I probably one of the only times I've cried in public at a convention was we had this one user who got set up on her phone and said, oh, I'm going to give my son a call. Like, okay, great. And she calls and she's like, hey, how are you? And he's like, Mom? She's like, yeah. And it was maybe like a 2-minute phone call. And it seemed very, very normal for a test call. She hangs up and she just starts crying. And in my head, I was still very new. I was like, oh my gosh, did something go wrong? I was like, are you okay? Were the captions okay? The captions looked okay. And she was like, no, they were. My son lives on the opposite coast. I'm on a fixed income, and I hadn't heard my son's voice in 4 years. We could only communicate via text message. I could not stop crying. And it's like these moments that even when stuff gets difficult and we're pushing through with development, it's, a lot of that stuff happens, and it makes what we do very worthwhile. And I think from what I've heard, that is why a lot of people contract with us. It's to get to be a part of that and provide that accessibility where otherwise the individual wouldn't have it.
Yeah, it also has its days where you have to take a break and walk away for just a second, and take a deep breath and start over again, because in the height of the pandemic, I wanted to send a meme that said, to all you phone operators, I don't care whether it was ASL, voice relay, caption call, caption, CapTel, whatever, your first responders and your essential workers during the pandemic, and trauma is real, right? So I wanted them to know, and I didn't know how to do it, and I'm not an emotional person, but it was one of probably where you just get done at the end of the day and you go, okay, can I do this tomorrow? Yes, because somebody's going to need something to have access, no matter what that's like. And so, but there are times that, yeah, the full moon, I now keep it a calendar on my desk and decide if I want to work that week.
And, Julia, that's why we have the debriefing procedures in place, because that's another part of confidentiality when you're working with human beings. Is we understand very well that being a part of somebody's life like that, even though you're essentially a fly on the wall for it, you can hear one side of the conversation, you're providing these captions, but it can be incredibly emotional. And when somebody has to deal with such an incredible emotional load that's been put on them, that's not even theirs, they won't get to follow up, they don't know how it ends. We have procedures in place where our CART providers can call me, and they're trained, and how they can talk about their feelings, the feelings that were elicited from the call, very general terms, nothing that's personally identifiable. But so they have that outlet, because when people don't have an outlet, it has to come out somewhere, right? They're either holding it inside, which is incredibly unhealthy, or speaking to somebody else about it, which goes against federal regulations. So we develop these debriefing procedures to ensure that our contractors do have a place to go. I'm not a therapist, but I just have a ton of feelings. So, I can relate to having a lot of feelings, and I'll walk them through it.
Michelle, you've been very quiet. Do you have any comments?
Well, I know we're probably going longer than usual here, so I'm not really saying much because I have not had any audio ability on my cell phone for years. And we talked about this a little before the meeting. I lived in Germany for almost 4 years, and so I disabled the audio, and I've not been able to hear any sound on a cell phone for years because I have a very profound hearing loss. So I've been back in the States since December 2015, but I just was so out of the habit of having audio, I never added it back in. So I'm in the cities this weekend, or this week, and I stopped in at T-Mobile yesterday and actually had them add the audio feature back onto my cell phone. So I will start using InnoCaptions very soon. So I don't know a lot about it other than the rules and all of that. And I recommend it to people because I hear such great things about it, but I don't have much personal experience to share. I will say that when I was in T-Mobile yesterday, I used Otter app on my phone, and the young man that I was speaking to was very interested in the speech to text, and he wanted to know why I was adding the audio back in, and I told them that we were doing a podcast today with InnoCaptions, and he said, "What's that?" And so I explained it, and I explained about Otter and the other speech to text apps out there, and said, this would be great for your company to know about, to teach all of your employees to offer these things to people who get cell phones and they need accessibility features, because one of the biggest things about the hard of hearing community is how vastly unaware we are. And there are millions of people who don't know anything about anything that's available. And so I think we have to kind of put that also on the companies that provide services. So I did a lot of captioning advocacy. I put my captioning advocate hat on yesterday, and he was really interested. So I wrote down the names of things for him to search, and he was interested in finding more about it, because I told him, you probably come in contact with a lot of people who have hearing loss, and he said yes. So he was pretty excited about that. So I always jump on an opportunity to tell people about InnoCaptions and any kind of speech to text, because it is so helpful.
Michelle, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing about that and for advocating generally. I feel like you're right. There are so many people who have no idea. I can't tell you how many people I encounter in my life where they ask me what I do, and I start talking about the deaf and hard of hearing community, and they go, it never occurred to me how somebody with a hearing loss would communicate on the phone. And, we start talking about that. And I guess for me, because I grew up in the community, it's just one of those things like, really? It's never occurred to you? Because it just always occurred to me. But that is truly wonderful that you are able to do that advocacy. I feel like at this point, a lot of people in my life start running the other direction when they see me getting out my metaphorical soapbox, when people start talking about accessibility. But yeah, hopefully the guy that you met will share it with somebody else who can use it. You guys are very right. It is on the companies. It's on the companies, the states. The states have programs that also do outreach to the deaf and hard of hearing communities. I know at InnoCaption, as a small company, we've done a lot of outreach through presentations and Google and social media. Honestly, what I find to be the most effective, and this may be because I don't do marketing, our marketing team may have a different outlook on this, but for me, I feel like we are able to reach more users when we do small support group presentations, because it's in an environment, even remotely, where it's not intimidating. You're able to kind of learn about the technology, ask the questions that you have, and then we're able to walk people through it. Before the pandemic, we did a lot of that in person, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of that if this pandemic ever ends. And I feel like that and word of mouth is what's best, because the deaf and hard of hearing community for so long have been provided with accessibility solutions. I want to make it clear, I am not talking about even other IPCTS providers. I'm not talking about any technology generally. Just the community for so long has been promised a certain level of service. So at least, now a little bit, but when we first got started, it was very difficult to explain the difference and be believed that, if you try this, why don't you do a demo call? I can't tell you how many people walked away from me being like, no, I know what that is. It doesn't work for me. I'm like, no, we use different technology. You want to give it a try? And, 50% of people would be like, okay, I have nothing to lose. I'll do a call. And that is what sold them. So when I do presentations, I always encourage people to spread by word of mouth, because you can see stuff on Google, you can see stuff on social media, but I feel like at the end of the day, hearing from another community member that you trust and is credible, hey, this is accessible technology that's worth trying, really makes all the difference, because especially for people who aren't tech savvy, there's a learning curve. And it is an investment to learn a new technology. With that being said, InnoCaption is designed to be very user-friendly and easy to use, but I talk to people all the time who say, I don't really know how to use a smartphone. A couple of years ago, I had a user call the office, and she was 93. She was great. She was like, I just want to start out by telling you, I am 93 years old. I do not know how to use this, but I got a smartphone today because I want InnoCaption. I'm going to need you to walk me through. I was like, okay, I can do that. And she's like, okay. It's like, well, hit the home button. She goes, oh, honey, I don't know what the home button is. I was like, okay, let's take it a step back. And we walked through, we got it installed, and she loved it. It was great. But yeah, so I kind of went off on a tangent there, but word of mouth is really helpful. So whether it's InnoCaption or Otter or another accessible technology that you find and you're like, wow, this really works, it's important that people are sharing that, which is why when people email me and are like, well, I don't necessarily need InnoCaption, but here is my issue. Do you know of something? I will find. So I talk to people, we share resources. Information sharing is key. And as a company, we need to do that too. And we do.
I just wanted to thank InnoCaption for supporting the hard of hearing community for so many years. You've done it with the Stay Wet Club, the Hearing Loss Association of America, the HLAA chapters, and I'm pretty sure you work with ALDA too. So I know you guys are always so ready and willing to support the hearing loss community, so thank you.
It's what makes, I said this in the beginning, it's why I love my job. I love interacting with community members and getting to know our users, and it really makes my day. People are always like, I can't believe you're a lawyer. Are you sure? I'm like, yeah. It's just, I really enjoy people. I love hearing people's stories and experiences, and having people share those with me makes everything that we do worth it. I would like to share with you guys a new feature that we haven't even announced. We heard, my dad was the first one that we heard this from, but growing up in the community, I've known forever that a lot of individuals in the deaf and hard of hearing community struggle with interactive voice response menus. So where those machines that are like, oh, what do you want? And it's like, representative. My dad, if he says yes because of his S, it does not get it. Now, it's only on desk view for right now, but we have a text-to-speech feature specifically for those situations where interactive voice response systems aren't understanding what the person is saying. So you don't have to keep either getting disconnected or going back to the main menu. You can type yes, and you can choose a female voice, male voice, and it'll say yes. And computers understand computers. So it's pretty wonderful. We're very excited about it. Our engineering team has been working very hard on it, and we recently put the beta into desk view. We're very excited. So give it a try. We're not publicly announcing it right now. That's normally how we do a lot of our features, is we start slow so our power users start using them and can provide us feedback so we can make little tweaks. And then once we're like, oh, this is good to go, then we do a big blast out. So I'm happy to share with you guys today that that is something that we've worked on and we're very excited about.
That is super exciting for me, because there's nothing I can do as a CART provider on my end with those phone calls. And I feel terrible that so yay, because everybody likes to have their, I don't know, I hate speech to text.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been in the middle of something and been grabbed by my dad. He's like, can you say yes? Can you say representative? I'm like, representative.
Right.
He's like, it always understands you.
That's really cool to hear. I'm going to wrap it up. Anything else? Anybody? Any thoughts? Okay. You can find InnoCaption in a link in our blog. So if you want more information or you want to check them out, click on it and follow the link to InnoCaption. If you are a president or a member of a hearing loss association group, whether you're still meeting online or in person, I highly suggest getting a hold of InnoCaption. They do great presentation, including troubleshooting. They did it for our Salt Lake chapter last year. Gosh, has it been a year? Maybe. Been a minute. That's all I know. Anyways, they're great with that. And I know even for Salt Lake, there were 2 or 3 people that immediately went out and got InnoCaption apps after they showed them how they work and the differences, and they've been really excited to have it. We appreciate you as always for joining us. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us and forward and all of that stuff on our social media. Send your hearing family to our podcast stations. I believe next week we're going to talk to you about state services. And so we'll have some insights there and some issues we maybe hope you can help us advocate, I think, when we get done with that blog. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you, Cristina, for presenting with us today. Great to hear from InnoCaptions. Have a great week, everyone. Next week, we talk state services and hearing loss.